There's a plant that doesn't just survive in dead soil, it heals it. It grows without a drop of irrigation, doesn't need chemicals, and has all 9 essential amino acids your body needs to survive. It was once the backbone of entire civilizations, capable of feeding families through brutal droughts, food shortages, and famine. But today, you've probably never even heard its name. Why? Because the powers that shaped modern agriculture buried it, on purpose. And what they replaced it with left millions starving, in debt, and dependent on a broken system. This isn't just a forgotten seed. It's a threat to billion-dollar corporations, development banks, and chemical giants, because it offers something they can't control. Freedom. Its name is Bambara groundnut, a crop so powerful, so self-sufficient, it breaks almost every rule of modern agriculture. For over 1,000 years, it thrived in the arid highlands of West Africa, feeding civilizations through wars, droughts, and collapse. It didn't just grow, it flourished in degraded, sandy soils where other crops died. And it needed nothing. No fertilizer. No irrigation. No pesticides. This wasn't some obscure plant used for emergencies. It was survival technology. Women farmers planted it between rows of millet and sorghum, watching their grains grow taller and stronger with every season. The Bambara vines shaded the soil, trapped moisture, and enriched the land naturally. And when the harvest came, it delivered something unheard of, a complete protein. Every essential amino acid the human body needs to survive, locked inside a single, drought-resistant bean. Even better, it could be turned into flour and stored for 3 years without refrigeration or chemicals. In a region plagued by unpredictable rainfall and seasonal hunger, this wasn't just food, it was freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't rely on imports, aid, or synthetic inputs. So why wasn't it exported? Mass-produced? Promoted by governments, NGOs, or the World Bank? Because the very things that made it a lifeline, made it a threat. Bambara groundnut wasn't forgotten. It was buried. When British and French colonial officers arrived in West Africa, they weren't there to support nutrition or sustainability. They were there to extract wealth. Crops like Bambara, nutritious, resilient, and community-based, didn't fit the colonial agenda. They couldn't be exported. They didn't generate tax revenue. They didn't grease the gears of European industry. But peanuts did. Peanuts produced oil for soap, fat for margarine, and bulk for export. They required water, fertilizer, labor, infrastructure. That's exactly what colonial powers wanted, dependency. So they rewrote the rules of agriculture. They labeled Bambara a minor subsistence crop and stamped it not recommended for commercial development, despite field reports admitting it outperformed peanuts in both nutrition and drought resistance. Entire economies were engineered around the peanut trade. Railroads were laid not to feed Africans, but to move crops to European ports. Research stations funded peanut optimization, not because it helped farmers, but because it served colonial profit. And when slave labor was abolished on paper, the peanut economy found a workaround. Enslaved people still arrived by caravan, bought not for Atlantic passage, but to work peanut plantations. French officials even warned that disrupting the supply of human captives would cripple agriculture. They didn't just erase Bambara from fields. They erased it from history, because it threatened the empire's most valuable crop, control. But the worst betrayal? It didn't end with colonization. It just changed names. Most legumes are good. Bambara is elite. While other beans fall short on essential amino acids, Bambara groundnut delivers all 9, a rarity in the plant world. In regions that rely heavily on grain, this matters more than most people realize. Cereals like maize and millet are high in energy, but dangerously low in lysine, a critical amino acid your body needs to build muscle and repair tissue. You can eat bowl after bowl and still waste away. It's called protein energy malnutrition, and it's been silently destroying lives for decades. Bambara solves that, without livestock, without imports, and without pills. It contains nearly double the lysine of cowpeas or chickpeas. Double the tryptophan, which affects mood, sleep, and brain health. 7 times the methionine compared to other common legumes. When traditional farmers paired Bambara with millet, the combination matched the nutritional profile of meat, in areas where meat was rare or unaffordable. But Bambara doesn't just nourish humans. It heals the soil, too. It fixes its own nitrogen, up to 80 kilograms per hectare. That means a farmer planting Bambara naturally fertilizes the land, improving yields for nearby crops like millet by 20 to 30%, no synthetic fertilizers needed. Let that sink in. A crop that builds your body like meat, enriches your land like fertilizer, and requires 0 chemicals. So why isn't it everywhere? Because in a world run by corporations, food is not just about nutrition. It's about control. And this crop? It's uncontrollable. By the 1960s, colonial flags were coming down, but the game hadn't changed. It just got a new logo. In came the Green Revolution, wrapped in promises of modernity and abundance. It sounded like progress, high-yield seeds, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and research programs backed by powerful donors. But what few realized was that this revolution was less about feeding the hungry, and more about locking farmers into a system they could never escape. And Bambara groundnut? It wasn't invited. Why? Because it didn't need the system. It didn't need patented seeds. It didn't need fertilizer. It didn't need debt. And in a business model built entirely around repeat purchases, that made Bambara dangerous. The global fertilizer market? Worth $60 billion. Pesticides? Another $70 billion. Seeds? Controlled by a handful of multinational giants who require you to buy new ones every year. But Bambara grows from last season's seeds. Needs no fertilizer or chemicals. Doesn't create a dime of recurring revenue. It doesn't just opt out of the industrial system. It exposes its weaknesses. So instead of funding Bambara, development agencies poured millions into soybean programs, a crop that struggles in African soil, needs irrigation, and can't survive without chemical support. And behind every failed soybean harvest, a new opportunity to sell more fertilizer, more improved seeds, more loans. Meanwhile, Bambara remained in the shadows, not because it was useless, but because it was unprofitable. And for the corporations shaping the future of food, that's the only metric that matters. If Bambara groundnut were a product, it would be a corporate disaster. It doesn't generate annual revenue. It doesn't require chemicals. It doesn't lock farmers into seed contracts or fertilizer cycles. In the eyes of global agribusiness, Bambara isn't a miracle, it's a threat to the business model. Let's break it down. Companies like Yara and Mosaic make billions selling nitrogen fertilizers to farmers. But Bambara fixes its own nitrogen, for free. Up to 80 kilograms per hectare. No synthetic inputs. No delivery trucks. No recurring sales. Every farmer planting Bambara is one less customer. Bambara is an ancient landrace. It and Oppos, in the public domain. You can't patent it. There's no intellectual property to protect, no subscription-style licensing, no genetic modifications to sell. Meanwhile, giants like Bayer and Syngenta have built empires on patented seeds, the kind that force farmers to buy fresh stock every year or face legal consequences. But Bambara? It just grows. No license required. Modern crops are bred in labs, not ecosystems. They're vulnerable. Fragile. Dependent on chemical armor. Bambara, on the other hand, evolved in Africa. It's naturally resistant to local pests and diseases. It shrugs off the very problems big AG profits from solving. Bambara empowers small, independent farmers, especially women. In the highlands of Burkina Faso, in the dry fields of Mali, in the cracked soils of northern Ghana, women farmers quietly kept the seeds alive, season after season, year after year. Not because it was profitable. Not because it was fashionable. But because they knew, you don't abandon what works just because outsiders can't profit from it. They planted Bambara alongside millet and sorghum, not for research grants or export quotas, but for survival. And they watched, as they always had, how the groundnut's vines shaded the soil, retained moisture, and nourished the land. They stored its flour for years without spoilage. And when the rains failed, as they often did, it was Bambara that still gave them food. These women weren't scientists. But they understood something the scientists missed. Yield means nothing if the crop dies when the rain stops. And the rains are stopping. Across the Sahel, climate change is exposing the lie of industrial agriculture. Imported crops are wilting. Fertilizer prices are rising. Seeds are failing. But Bambara? It was bred for chaos. It thrives where others collapse. So while the world chased patented miracles in laboratories, these women held on to a real one, passed down through hands, not headlines. They preserved more than just a seed. They preserved a future. Today, the science is finally catching up. Universities are publishing studies on climate-smart crops. The UN is holding conferences on future foods. Development agencies say they want resilience, sustainability, nutrition. And on paper, Bambara checks every box. So where are the seed rollouts? Where are the subsidies? Where are the multi-million-dollar programs to get Bambara into the hands of farmers? Nowhere. Because Bambara breaks the system that modern aid was built to maintain. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most development aid isn't about empowerment, it's about leverage. Nations are offered support in the form of loans, not gifts. Loans to buy imported fertilizers. Loans to purchase hybrid seeds. Loans that must be repaid, with interest, to the very institutions that designed the dependency. A crop like Bambara? It needs none of that. No fertilizer equals no loan. No patented seed equals no royalties. No chemical inputs equals no recurring revenue. No debt equals no control. And that's the threat. Because if farmers can grow protein-rich food, store it for years, heal their own soil, and feed their families, all without paying into the system, the entire debt-driven model begins to unravel. Bambara doesn't just feed people. It frees them. And in a global system where freedom isn't profitable, that makes Bambara dangerous. The Bambara groundnut was never lost. It was buried, under colonial rule, corporate greed, and decades of institutional neglect. But it survived. Not because of research labs. Not because of development grants. But because a handful of women, working in silence, refused to let it die. And now, as climate change shatters the illusion of stability, as input-dependent farms collapse under heat and drought, the world is scrambling to rediscover what was right in front of us all along. A seed that grows in the harshest soil. A protein that rivals meat. A system that doesn't require debt, chemicals, or control. You can find Bambara flour in Lagos. You can find roasted Bambara snacks in Era. The knowledge wasn't lost, it was preserved, generation by generation, outside the reach of patents and profits. Every time a farmer plants Bambara, they're doing more than growing food. They're making a statement. That true agricultural power doesn't come from a lab. It comes from a seed that remembers who it was before it was erased. The most advanced agricultural technology isn't a synthetic chemical or a modified genome. It's a 1,000-year-old bean that knows how to feed the land, the people, and the future, for free. And that's exactly why they tried to erase it. But some plants are too resilient to die. Some seeds are too powerful to patent. And some truths are too important to stay buried.